Well, hello, everyone. Good morning or good evening, as the case may be. We've got people I know from across several continents and time zones. So we're excited to be here for our GCEC webinar. Today's topic is a global mindset for our student entrepreneurs. My name is Jeff Reed. I'm the director of the Entrepreneurship Initiative at Georgetown University and a proud member of the GCEC Advisory Board. And excited to kind of bring these programs to you on a somewhat regular basis. This is the first time we've done a webinar since our amazing conference in Dallas a few weeks ago, and I'm still just really basking in all the great learning and networking and fun we had there. So if you're new to GCEC, I encourage you to stick with us and get more involved. Our organization is a really robust community with hundreds of schools from all over the world, people that lead different types of university-based entrepreneurship centers. We come together, learn from each other in an annual conference, through other meetings, through these virtual webinars, and a growing suite of robust products and services and ways for us to learn from each other. So stick with us at GCEC. Check out the website as you see here. Our virtual connection series today has some amazing panelists. Pretty soon I'm going to turn it over to each of them to tell you more about their school and their view on this idea of global mindset. And we're going to go in the order you see here on the screen. We're going to start with Mia Young-Elmertoft from Copenhagen Business School, and then Scott Kerwer from Lehigh University, and Rachel Stockey from King's College London. So with that, actually, before I turn it over to Mia, I just want to encourage our audience here to engage throughout the program using the chat function. You can ask questions of our panelists at any point, and they're going to try to engage on the chat function, and then we'll have more Q&A towards the end of the program. All right, with that, I am happy to take down my slides and turn it over to Mia from Copenhagen. Take it away, Mia.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm just going to share my screen here and see if I can get my slides up. And then present mode, and I hope you are able to see my slides. Do you see them? Perfect. Great. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Mia, and I'm the head of leadership development and a leadership coach at Copenhagen Business School at the Center of Entrepreneurship, the Copenhagen School of Entrepreneurship, as we are called, as a unit at CBS in Copenhagen. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Founder to Leader program that I'm heading up, and that is actually a little bit of a development from the presentation I gave back in 2022. In Las Vegas at GCEC. So I'm really excited to sort of take you through what we've been doing in terms of the founder and student mindset since last time I had the pleasure to be at the GCEC conference. So just to recap, because I'm pretty sure that everyone was at the session that I did. I did a talk back then in 2022 where we basically had revamped the entire Student Accelerator program and kind of brought in this personal development aspect into the core program of the Student Accelerator. We also have an incubator in our center. But essentially here I talked about that we were in the process of developing the student founders with a sustainable mindset to become best possible leaders in the future. And that was something that we really worked to kind of integrate and be part of the core program, the core offering that we had, and essentially moving away from focusing primarily on the business side, the startup side, and to kind of also address the more founder-centric side of building a business, which was like a strategic shift. So it's not that we are not focusing on the classical business development disciplines, but we are also adding this layer of personal development and believing that the founders themselves are the material that needs to be kind of cultivated and developed in order to create sustainable and kind of resilient organizations that can kind of continue to live on all through the different stages of the startup journey, so they can also essentially become sustainable and financially sustainable business in the long run. And we added this personal development and leadership track as part of the core offering. We did a lot of testing and tweaking to see what could we do, and it landed really well. We did workshop, we did one-to-one executive coaching, and tried to see what can we do with the students at the stage where they are a little bit earlier in their development, both in terms of their age, but also in terms of the business. And then the last slide that I had was about sort of the next steps, where we were planning on spinning out this personal development and leadership training to a standalone program for startups at a later stage. And that's essentially what we did and have been doing for the last year, where I transitioned from being on the core of the student accelerator to then doing this side program that we then designed and targeted for our alumni. So kind of as part of the lifelong learning of the university, see how can we actually bring some of these founders that has been in the incubator and the accelerator at some point, couple of years, everything from 1 year, 2 years to 10 years after they left, and then bring them back as part of their sort of lifelong training as leaders. They have been out, they've made their own experiences, and they've been building their business and been ready to leave sort of the home. And then we actually thought we could provide them with something that would be valuable to come back with. And that's basically what we were then doing. So we created this standalone program called Founder to Leader. And essentially, this is what we are addressing: the journey from focusing on getting everything done yourself, being a resource constrained business where you never have enough resources. You all know how it is to be kind of starting up something, and then to sort of slowly understanding as the company grow and scale and the organization grow, you have your first couple of employees, and suddenly you have to create value through others and supporting others in doing. And that transition from kind of being the one doing everything yourself to then suddenly having to support others and facilitating others' work is quite a hard transition. And there's a lot of identity challenges that comes with that, with some of the founders that we could see, at least in our sort of alumni network, that we are very close because they have so many great memories from the time that they were sitting there. So they're also very loyal and come back as mentors, and we are using them for other things as well, but we hadn't actually created this offering designed specifically for them. So this was kind of the focus was to kind of create an offering with this transition in mind. And what we tried to offer them is a way to professionalize their leadership role in the core of sort of separating the person from the business and giving them a framework so they could better understand what is my role as a leader. How is that different from being the founder or the CEO or the CMO? How can we create some psychological boundaries for them to think in a different way about their work identity and about like how they should kind of professionalize and step up their game, now actually being a leader of people, and giving them some tools that's less just some good advice from some mentors, but it's actually building on something a little bit more solid. So what we did was creating this program that's open for all founders in Denmark with full-time employees, with people leadership responsibilities. So we were going for people who had actually paid employees, so they had to be at a little bit later stage. But some of them only have a couple, like 2, 3, 4, 5, but up to actually applicants that had 25 full-time employees. So we actually have quite a span. But it was all designed with the persona of the alumni that left the incubator and the accelerator. And what it consists of is like essentially 4 pillars, the program. There's like off-site retreats where we go on these like overnight stays, and we work very deep with them in terms of understanding themselves, understanding how their sort of identity is connected to what they do, and what is like, what do we need to look at in a way where they can work more constructively with their leadership and their approach to building this and scaling a business, where are things that are sometimes creating friction and difficulties for them that we can work with the way they think about leadership to address. And they use a smaller group where they get very close. So it's a little bit like like this peer group where they become very close to each other, and they can share in smaller groups some of the struggles that they are facing. Then in between, we also offer these one-to-one, it's essentially executive leadership coaching session, where we have trained coaches to come and talk to them specifically about the challenges, addressing and supporting them essentially in the things that they find challenging, and being on their side, not advising them, not like kind of trying to steer them, but to also help them connect with the resources that they have when they are sometimes feeling that they are under this a lot of pressure and they are drowning in their own emotions, and they don't always have access to think about what is the right thing to do here when there's conflicts and there's like difficult conversations that needs to be had, and there's a lot of like pressure from investors board and downwards from employees, and lack of authorization from within. And then we had these workshop days at CBS where we actually connected with some of the top leadership researchers that we had at the university that could come in and bring some of this evidence-based leadership research in that was relevant for them, and try to connect with the more academic part and bridge the gap between practice and research. And that has worked super well, despite the fact that some of these researchers that we brought in are not necessarily domain experts within the startup context. And then, of course, there's the network, the community among these peers that is like super, super valuable for them. And they definitely, it feels like this is something that they will hang on to for many, many years in the future. And as you can see, we have like a quite age span, 22 years to 55 years, very diverse in terms of gender. I think we are 40-60% male and female, also diverse industry and educational backgrounds. And then essentially some of the things that we are working with are co-founder dynamics, a lot of suppressed feelings and conflicts that has been worked up over the years. So taking your authority in your own business as a leader, daring to step into that role, letting go of control and allowing others to step up to responsibility, and healthy separation of boundaries, and of course learning to trust others. And there's some kind of work to be done there after having gone through all the hardship of a couple of years of building this business. And then of course this embodied understanding of diversity and different perspectives that's so important in the leadership aspect of building any business essentially. And we have very high, like positive results from our evaluations. Co-founders apply because we only accept one co-founder from each company, so you can have that confidential, safe space to feel safe, even if there's like some kind of co-founder dynamic at play. But they actually recommend each other to come into the next cohort, so that's great. And they recommend to their network, and we have a lot of applications. So I think we actually hit something that was a high demand for, because there's less focus on these like soft aspects and more about building the business. So I think there's a huge gap that can be met there. Yeah, so I think
I'm gonna jump in, Mia. I think we're over time here.
That's pretty much also what I had to say. Yeah, if you want to know more, always welcome to reach out and connect.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It's a very important topic. I think it's great to recognize and support people making that difference from that transition from founder to leader. So in the interest of time, I am going to move on to our next panelist. And so I will now turn over to Scott Kerworth, the Executive Director of the Iacocca Institute at Lehigh University. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and welcome all, and thanks for your attention today. And this is a topic I'm thrilled to talk with you about, and something we've got a lot of passion for here at Lehigh University. The Iacocca Institute is where I serve, and it's one of the institutes and centers on our campus that focuses on the development of entrepreneurs. One of the other significant ones is the Baker Institute that focuses on entrepreneurship, creativity, and innovation. And I share that because we all like to take our lead from what we refer to as our future makers. And our future makers is not only the strategic plan at Lehigh University, but it also calls on great alumni like you see here, Lee Iacocca, who many of you may know was one of the few individuals who served as a CEO of not one, but two automotive companies. And Iacocca was ahead of his time. He was talking about mobility well before we were. He led the designs of not only the Ford Mustang, but also the Chrysler minivan. So we draw our inspiration from Lee, and he knew, like all of us, that things are becoming even more complex. And I mention that because while we all know that, the question becomes, what are we doing to position individuals to handle the complexity? So we take a very particular approach to this in entrepreneurship at the Iacocca Institute. We want to make sure that our learners aren't just looking at problems, but that they're solving problems well. A mentor of ours named Russell Akoff talked about doing the wrong thing righter. We want to make sure that we don't support entrepreneurs in doing the wrong thing righter. We want to make sure that we support entrepreneurs in their innovation of doing the right thing. And to do this, we do our best to give them frameworks, a mindset, and some tools. And I'm going to talk about just a couple of those tools today. And like Mia and her great programming, we add this content in so we've got a foundation that's shared for how we address organizational challenges and problems. So some of you may have heard of the great work of the Harvard social psychologist Howard Gardner. We look at not only disciplinary expertise, but ensuring that our entrepreneurs and leaders understand how to synthesize, create, how to be respectful across cultures, and make ethical decisions. And I say this because all of that is critical to the development of a global entrepreneurial mindset and the ability to practice. Second, we take a systems thinking view, and this is often said, but rarely do folks take time to explain it. Systems or holistic thinking versus mechanistic or scientific thinking exclusively. When you're an entrepreneur in organizational life, you can't hold any variable constant. You can't hold your marketing department constant. You can't hold the operations or logistics team constant. You have to look at how all the parts of your entrepreneurial venture interact. So we ensure that we build a systems thinking awareness and understanding into all of our programs. We believe the interaction of the parts creates a greater whole, and we believe all of our entrepreneurs have to understand what that means and how to build upon it. We also offer a couple sets of frameworks for interacting with problems, addressing complexity, communication, and ensuring that our entrepreneurs look at the measures that matter the most. And I'm going to talk about a couple of these. Not every problem needs to be addressed the same way. And sometimes we find ourselves exposed to eager, very, very bright and competent entrepreneurs who head down the path of addressing every problem the same way. And not every problem has a solution, or not every problem should pursue a solution. Some problems need redesign and development. They need to be dissolved. Other problems, sometimes we have to compromise and we end up resolving. But sometimes as an entrepreneur, there are problems that you just don't want to take on. So you have to absolve yourself of those issues. Again, frameworks, tools, and mindset is how we focus on that inner working for the entrepreneur's development. We also introduce frameworks for addressing complexity. And I imagine some of you have seen this, and I highlight it because while there are those problems that can be addressed and they're obvious or complicated, there are others that are complex and chaotic, and ensuring that our entrepreneurs understand not only what problems to take on and how to address them, but when they're looking at complexity, what are the ways that they can interact with it? For instance, sometimes there aren't best practices. There are not experts. And that tends to be where we become most excited, when our entrepreneurs are finding emergent solutions and business practices. I'm pleased that Mia addressed group and team dynamics, because we wrestle with conflict quite a bit. And we're fans of this quote by Kenneth K. Conflict's neither good nor bad, but it just is. So we perform a battery of diagnostics, everything from what you would expect, like strengths finders, so our entrepreneurs get to know themselves better. We give them 360 surveys, but we also introduce them to conflict inventories like the Thomas Kilmann. And there are many that you can draw from. We've chosen that one because it's been psychometrically valid over large populations. But an entrepreneur understanding how they interact with conflict and how they support their team and enable conflict to happen is what we refer to as positive agitation. It's necessary, not good or bad, but it's something that all great entrepreneurs learn how to deal with. And when they're dealing with conflict, inevitably they're going to interact with groups and teams. Not all groups are teams, but all teams are groups. We draw upon the work of the great Bruce Tuckman, but we note that his theory of organizational group dynamics hasn't changed much since 1965. So we've added on to it, because the best entrepreneurial groups and teams don't simply form, storm, and norm. They continue, they socialize, they agitate, they synergize, and they're able to maintain sustained interaction despite the conflict. And we highlight this because we're very mindful that keeping good groups of very bright people together is one of the entrepreneur's roles. And continuous communication about a strategic outlook. How often, at least I've experienced this as an entrepreneur myself, how often do you lose track of that strategic path that you're on? So whatever model an entrepreneur selects, we draw upon the great work of Don Hambrick and his colleagues. Whatever strategic framework is selected, the return to that framework is all important. So we impress that upon our entrepreneurs and do all that we can to make sure that they help their teams navigate. And last but not least, and I'll pause here, Jeff, cognitive dissonance. Entrepreneurs, the most successful, have the ability to hold multiple dynamics, multiple realities in their head concurrently. They have to manage the beliefs, the values, the attitudes of their organization and their product or their portfolio of new initiatives and programs that they're taking to market, but they've got to also be aware of what has already happened in the marketplace around them. Because as Machiavelli said with his great quote on change, never so perilous a task than to change the order of things. So entrepreneurs have a number of things that they must keep in mind on their journey, and we try to ensure they have the basic skills, the basic tools to ensure that their mindset is global and that they're interactive versus reactive or preactive to the challenges that they face. So thank you very much. And Jeff, if there are any questions from the group, I'd certainly like to address them.
Awesome, Scott. Thanks so much. I took some notes on this. I was particularly interested in that concept of absolve, resolve, solve, or dissolve. I like the way that you described those different ways to deal with conflict. So, in the interest of time, I think I will move to our next panelist, and then hopefully we'll have more time at the end for Q&A. And next up is Rachel Stocky from King's College London. So Rachel, over to you.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me. Hello, everyone. And hopefully you can see my slides.
Yes, all good.
Excellent. I'm getting the nod from Jeff. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Rachel Stocky. I am Head of Entrepreneurial Skills at King's College London, which is a job title I believe to be unique. If anyone knows of anyone that has the same job title as me, please let me know. I would like to chat to them. Outside of my role at King's, I'm also a qualified coach and spend a lot of my time coaching founders on accelerator programs, which very much informs the way that I do my role at King's and think about how we help students to develop entrepreneurial mindsets and to think about global problems. So when thinking about the topic for today, King's College actually does things a little differently. But before I jump into that, I wanted to give you some context about King's in case you don't know about us. We have over 33,000 students across 9 faculties at King's. You call faculty something different to us. I think it's schools. Faculty to us is our kind of big departments. And half of our faculties at King's College are medical based. So over half of our students come to King's to study something health or medical related. So we have a huge amount of STEM based subjects. We are spread across 5 campuses in London, so that can have its own challenges with accessing and engaging students when they're spread out across a big city. We also have over 250,000 alumni across the world, 3,000 research and teaching academic staff, and another 5,000 professional services staff that help that all happen, of which I am one. I am not an academic member of staff. Within the Entrepreneurship Institute itself, we're a team of 10. We're a small team, but we pack a big punch, and we are there to serve all staff, all students, and all alumni for King's College, with the mandate that we help everyone at King's to have the opportunity to make entrepreneurship part of their DNA by 2029. That's our vision statement, 2029, because that will be the 200th celebration birthday of King's College. So that's the vision period that we're currently working to. But hopefully that gives you a bit of context about the context that I'm working in and the community that I serve. So how do we do that, and how do we think about this as an institute? We do the startup stuff that everyone's very familiar with. We have accelerator programs, we have ideation competitions, and all that good stuff. Our startups have done very well. Our institute's only 7, coming up to 8 years old, so we're still a baby in a lot of context, but our startups have raised over £83 million in revenue, raised over £100 million in investment, have gone on to employ 1,300 people now. So we're doing okay on that stuff. And I think as centres, we all know what we're doing in the startup land. My remit is slightly different, and the way that we kind of approach mindsets at King's, I've come to learn, is quite different, because we have 2 outputs, not just startups. We put skills on the same level as, and in many cases above, our startup outputs. And this isn't about the skills required to be a successful entrepreneur. We come at this in terms of extracting the skills that entrepreneurs use, the way that they think and the way that they behave. And we teach that as a separate framework to all of our students, regardless of whether they want to be an entrepreneur or not. Because one of the barriers that we come up against is, if you were to think about your student population and what percentage of those students want to actively start a business right now, I bet you're looking at a percentage that's in the single figures. It's a very niche offering, when actually the vast majority of our 33,000 students, like I said, are coming to do careers that they already have in mind. They want to come and be a doctor or a lawyer. And if I try to start saying to them, come to the Entrepreneurship Centre, they're like, why? I don't want to be an entrepreneur. So we automatically have a barrier to the vast majority of our students, except that if we take this approach of entrepreneurial skill building and entrepreneurial mindsets, suddenly I have something that is relevant to every single student, because I'm asking them a different question. So the way that we go about developing skills is a framework that I developed when I joined King's about 5 years ago, which is called the 7 Skills of an Entrepreneurial Mindset. So we've broken the concept of that mindset down into 7 tangible skills that underpins all of the programming and all of the offers that we have across the Institute. Some of which are venture-based, and they underpin those too, but some of them are completely separate and distinct from the process of starting a venture and are about you developing yourself as an entrepreneurial thinker and doer. So I don't have time to go in depth on all the framework, but if you do want more information about the breakdown of these skills, let me know, happy to share. I've spoken at GCEC a couple of times about it now, if anyone was in any of those sessions. But really what this does is opens up different conversations than what we're able to have with that select group of students that wants to start ventures. Because instead of having a conversation that goes, but you're from the Entrepreneurship Institute, I don't want to be an entrepreneur, therefore you're not relevant to me, I get to ask the student the question of going, okay, you told me you want to be a doctor, that's why you've come to King's, excellent. What would it mean to you to be an entrepreneurial doctor? And usually they go, oh, that's a different question. And suddenly they're starting to think about, oh, well, if I was an entrepreneurial doctor, that would mean I'd be at the cutting edge of my field. It means I'd be solving problems within my industry. It means I'd be doing exciting stuff. I'm like, so that's the conversation I want you to have with yourself is, this is how this can be relevant to you, because I'm not telling you or asking you to change your career path. I'm saying, what could this skill set add to your personal toolbox, and what could you do with it within the field that you're interested in going into? And suddenly we have an entry point for every single student at King's College. The way that we think about this globally is the sandbox that we create for them to develop these skills. And that is global problems. And we use the UN Sustainable Development Goals a huge amount at King's as the sandbox to get them to think about problems bigger than just what they observe on a day-to-day basis. Because we get a lot of student entrepreneurs going down the venture track who are solving problems that they've encountered in their student life, and they want to solve things like student loneliness on campus, which is a real problem, but it's only thinking within their tiny sphere on campus. So we use the UN Sustainable Development Goals to give them permission to tackle the biggest problems that our world faces in a safe environment where they can play with these skills and tear these problems apart with no real consequence to begin with, so that they can build up confidence in using these skills. And that permission, I think, is really important, because I think a lot of students don't feel like they are the one that can step forward and tackle these things, but we really need them to be, and they absolutely should be. They're going to be our leaders of the future. So the framing of the big questions that they get to play with, I think, is really important. So like I said, the key to this is switching the conversation round away from what business do you want to start to what problem do you want to solve, and what kind of person do you want to be in order to be able to solve those problems. So what does this framework has been the real key to opening up this world for us? Because like I said, one, it underpins every single one of our programs. So all of our team know the skills framework inside out. The initiatives that they're responsible for running, they can tell you which of the 7 skills their initiative develops. And importantly, the student coming to that event will know which skill that initiative links to, or multiple. It also means that we've been able to do something that a lot of people haven't got their head around, which is starting to measure learning gain and impact of skills across all of our programs, because we're able to assess students before an initiative and after, and measure confidence gain around particular skills and see which ones they're more confident in, which ones they're lacking in. And because we have a standardized approach to that across all of our programs, we can see where our impact is across year to year. So I can tell you that in the last academic year, we upskilled over 1,000 students in our extracurricular programs. And we have quite a, not complex, but a standardized framework of how we do that measurement. The other thing that it's meant for us is that by going skills first, we've had way more attention from academic and faculties wanting us to go in and deliver on their program, because whilst they couldn't see the relevance of entrepreneurship to their subject matter before, they can see the relevance when I'm saying, I could teach your students how to do compelling communication. I can teach them how to be disruptive thinkers. And suddenly they're going, please come in and run a workshop on the geography curriculum or on the dentistry curriculum. And we've had some really interesting connections across the university and spreading our message far and wide. And the most important thing for me in this framework was that it's not an academic framework, it's a practice-based framework. And it's not something that sits in the background. This is language that we use with students very openly, and they use back to us. So I have conversations with students on a daily basis where they're saying to me, like, get it done, or that's disrupt, or, you know, and they can name those skills. And their confidence in being able to articulate their own skill set means that they can vocalize the value of those skills when they're talking to future employers or other academics or whatever it is, where they can understand the value of thinking entrepreneurially and explain that to others. So we have a system where it's sort of, our students become our best ambassadors, if you like. And generally it's opened a lot of interesting doors. But I'm gonna pause there, and hopefully I've not gone over too much.
Great job, Rachel. Thank you so much. I love that title that you have around entrepreneurial skills, and I think you outlined some great stuff there. We do use the UN Sustainability Goals as well, sustainable development. I think that's a great way to frame things, and I love the way you've kind of articulated your programs in ways that students find easy to connect to. Right, we find ourselves marketing heavily, trying to convince students that they should engage with us, but we have started kind of rethinking that and trying to figure out what do the students really care the most about, and they may not identify primarily as entrepreneurial. So thanks for sharing kind of how you do that. I just want to open up for questions from the audience here. You can put them in the chat. I think this idea around entrepreneurial mindset and global mindset is an interesting question, an interesting topic. I know that we think a lot about how do we make sure our students kind of are thinking globally when they're engaging in entrepreneurial things. So I guess I encourage anybody that has something that they do, they can share it in the chat. And while we're looking at that, I'll ask our panelists, is there something that you didn't get a chance to say, or something that was inspired by one of the other panelists that you want to add here? I'll just kind of open it up again, like something, that you've done to help inspire that global mindset.
I can go. One of the initiatives that we've been involved in over the last academic year is actually at King's College. We're part of a consortium across Europe with 9 other universities, and we've set up a entrepreneurship challenge between those universities where they could have teams of students join together from across different universities, but each university had to set a problem for them to solve. Our one was in partnership with our local council on mental health in teenagers, which is a problem that they're kind of trying to tackle in the borough. And we had teams enter from all over Europe, Oslo. There's like 9 different universities. And I think that was a different, like, I don't think we do collaborative things enough. And one of the great things to see from that was having a challenge that was based across Europe. They had no choice but to think about it in a more global way, because they had students that were coming from, they might be in a team with students from other countries. And I think that's we've had a theme going through the different talks around how we get students to work to get better together, adding into that students who are not all necessarily English as their first language, or, and all of those sorts of things. I think it adds a different aspect to that global mindset of not only can you solve global problems, but can you work in global teams? And I think that was a really interesting thing to see.
Thanks, Rachel. I know. Go ahead, Scott. Well, actually, I'll just say real quick, and then I'll let you chime in. It's appropriate maybe for our topic that, and I should acknowledge, this week is Global Entrepreneurship Week, right? And if you haven't engaged with that on your campus, I encourage you to do that. Maybe plan something for next year. I know that we shared information about Global Entrepreneurship Week with our students, and one of the ideas was to make sure they understand that there is this global network and community around entrepreneurship, and wherever in the world they might go, they can find entrepreneurs and people supporting entrepreneurs. So, okay, with that in mind, I'll kick it back over to you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. One, and these are all great comments. One other element that resonates very much with us at Lehigh as a research university, and I know that's a common theme here, research universities. In addition to the education, and I very much like Rachel, we subscribe to the practical. You know, how can we bring this to life with these tools and frameworks? But at the same time, we make very significant investments in linking all of our entrepreneurial learners into research that our faculty are interested in. It's almost like an accelerant. If we can get the faculty engaged in the research of the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur engaged in the research of the faculty, then the service and the innovative products and solutions then just fall out of it even more rapidly. So, finding that path is a real good one.
Excellent. Awesome. Well,
I have a question as well in terms of the sort of how we think about it, because I think when you come from a small country like Denmark, I think there's like no way around thinking about international expansion. If you have we are like 5.5 million people in Denmark. So of course, in order to expand your business, there was like always this ever-present kind of idea of scaling international. But I think what we try to do is to really think about sustainability and planetary boundaries in a way where it starts with the individual. It starts with thinking about this. We also have this open system theory as one of the kind of underlying foundations in the way how we work with them, and seeing the individual as a system in itself embedded in bigger systems. And essentially, it's also about understanding that the individual, the person, is also a system with boundaries, time, right? We all have sort of only so much time and capacity, and learning and teaching the students and the alumni, for that matter, about understanding you can't push beyond the boundaries that you have as a system, even within yourself. What do I have capacity to do? Because we all know what happens when we work too much and we get too stressed, and we start to sort of be less effective. We start to get like snappy, and it doesn't really affect things in a positive way. And this is like a way of thinking of not kind of transcending and like the boundaries that we shouldn't.
Thanks, Mia. So I got a question coming in from Elaine Hagan. Go ahead, Elaine from UCLA.
I couldn't get my hand signals to work. I was just going to say what Mia just said was so important. We've worked with a lot of smaller countries, and what we've found is that you almost teach entrepreneurship.
Elaine, you got muted halfway through your talk. Yeah.
Am I back?
Yes.
When you're working with a small country or companies in a small country, even if it's not hugely capital intensive, it's almost the exact opposite of how we typically teach entrepreneurship in the United States, because we are typically teaching students here to stay local first, test and pilot, but you don't have that luxury in some of the smaller countries. And it's important now, as so many of the US universities are seeing growth in their international student population. I think it's something really important for all of us to keep in mind. So and then I just had a quick question with what Rachel was saying, and I was multitasking at one point, so if you already said it, I apologize. Can you talk a little bit about some of the metrics you're using? And I think I really, I couldn't tell if you enjoy your title or don't like it, but I do really think it's important to foster these entrepreneurial skills. I feel sometimes we have gone too much hero worship on founders, which also drives some of our students away from this. And but we're going through an interesting time this year with the growth in international students who feel like they don't necessarily have the luxury of being founders in the United States without as large an ecosystem as they might have at home. And so some of them are going more towards corporate jobs, even though they're trying to decide, are they going to launch in the United States? Are they going to go home, or are they going to take the big job just to get the visa that they need? So we're going through a lot of transitions in this area right now.
Yeah, so one of the other things I didn't mention, for the very practical reason for doing skills-based things as well, is that I don't know what the rules are in the States, but international students in the UK are not allowed to start businesses in the UK on a student visa. So there's a limit to what we can do with them in a venture capacity, and we have 40% international students at King's. So it would be a real limit to us on our ability to be relevant to that portion of the students if we were just talking about ventures. On the measurement side of things, so we do all the usual venture tracking stuff, like I said, revenue, investment, jobs, all of that lovely stuff. On the skills side of things, we have developed skills assessments that, to be fair, the limit of them is they are largely confidence metric based because they are self-reporting. So we have an assessment that takes them through the 7 skills and has sort of sub-statements under each skill around how confident do you feel to do this thing. And they benchmark themselves against, on a scale of 1 to 10 that we've benchmarked. So we say a 1 is like no confidence at all, 10 looks like this, 5 looks like this. So to hopefully add some objectivity into their reflection, so they're not just going, I'm great, it's a 10. So we try and get them to think a bit more about that. And then they do that pre and post our big programs. And we also add a question at the end, which we found to be really important, which is to get them to show them the scores that they gave themselves at the beginning and say, knowing what you know now that you've been through the program, do you think you rated yourself fairly at the start? Because what we see is that kind of learning confidence curve around thinking that you know everything and then realizing you know nothing as you go through a process. So we kind of adjust for that, if you like. The complexity that we add to this is that we've ranked each of our initiatives on levels from like 1 to 4. 1 being like a standalone workshop where a student might come and spend 1 to 2 hours with us on learning how to pitch or compelling communication, as an example. One of the skills, a single blast as a one-off, that would be like a level 1, up to a level 4 being a year-long program. So our full accelerator program, we also have a flagship skills program called the Enterprise Award, which is not linked to building a business. It takes them through the 7 skills as a personal development program for a year. That would be a level 4 where we have multiple touch points with them on their kind of skill development as they go through. And we upscale or downscale our level of evaluation based on what level that initiative is. So for a one-off workshop, we don't get them to do a full skills self-assessment, but they are asked 1 or 2 questions for that level, which means we can have data across the whole suite. And it means that we can have standardized, like I was saying, sort of at the end, we can take snapshots of our whole impact across everything that we've delivered across those different levels. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate that. Please join me in thanking all of our panelists, Rachel, Mia, and Scott. We thank you for sharing what you are doing at your schools. As we start to close out here, I just want to iterate, it's such an important topic to kind of maintain that global mindset. I think having our students do that, and of course having GCEC do that as well. We're excited as an organization that we have members from all over the world, and it's a good way for us to continue to learn from each other and develop our own global mindset while we're also trying to do that with our students. With that, before we close out, I'm happy to turn over to Holly DeArmond, the wonderful global Grand Poobah and champion of GCEC, with some closing comments. So Holly, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff, for always moderating so well for our virtual connections. And thank you to Nadine Ventus, who is in the behind the scenes organizing all of this. And thank you to our panelists. But we're going to try something new in January for our virtual connection. Many of you who attended our conference this year, you completed a survey. And overwhelmingly, people are asking us for collaboration and networking connections outside of our annual conference. So we're going to try something in January, virtual networking, where we are going to gather at this time, well, 12 Central Time, and do some breakout rooms by region. So when you register for this session, you'll actually, elect what region you're in, and try to foster some more of that networking and collaboration that you all have been asking for. So, and also try to bring a little more creativity to our virtual connections. We hope to try the networking connections in the summer as well, if the January offering goes well. So that's what we're doing. To do that, one of the things that we're hoping to launch after this networking session is online networking via Slack. So Nadine has a poll here. I'm doing my customer discovery, wondering how many people on this session are using Slack. Again, we're just trying to definitely get some more tools out there to our membership where you can connect, and this might be one of those that we launch after our networking session. So looks like people are participating in the poll. Thank you for doing that. And I'll turn it over to you, Jeff, to close us out.
Oh, this is great. I've been kind of giving Holly a hard time for a little while now that we should do a Slack channel or something like that. So I'm glad to see some movement here. I do think there's tremendous opportunity to find ways, to foster ways for members to connect with each other beyond the annual conference, where you have to essentially get on an airplane, and even beyond these monthly webinars, where we do have some interactivity. But a Slack channel or something like it may be another valuable way for members to connect. So, and that's what GCEC is all about. Thanks for participating today. Thanks again to our panelists. And with that, I'll close it out. I hope we'll see you all in January for the next event. Have a wonderful holiday season and new year. Bye-bye.